Hello, everyone. I am quickly realizing that I always try to do my streams. I always try to appear presentable. Try to be cleaned up when I do streams or make content or whatever, and just to kind of keep it professional looking ish. But I have quickly realized that if I can't just sit down and start streaming, at least for this specifically, then it usually doesn't happen, and I'm not gonna be able to get through the Book of Mormon in the summer. So, gonna try to be a lot more consistent and just get on here and read. So, you're just gonna have to look past my unkemptness. That's a word. Chapter 12, though. I suppose I should do a quick recap after I pull up my stream here. So we have the last several chapters were actually given to us by Jacob, Nephi's younger brother. Jacob also has this same love for the words of Isaiah that Nephi does, and Jacob included a few. Well, Nephi actually took Jacob's words, and Jacob took Isaiah's words, and he preached to the Nephites. And then after Jacob's remarks, Jacob quotes Isaiah in a couple chapters, and then Jacob gives his explanation of those chapters. And then Nephi, after that explanation and a few more remarks from Jacob, Nephi is then like, okay, now I'm going to give you my Isaiah chapters, some more Isaiah chapters, I should say, because we already got some from Nephi in First Nephi. But this is where most Isaiah chapters are included in the Book of Mormon. So we're going to try to tackle the beast here. This is when people either just kind of skip or zone out because it's too confusing or what have you. But we're going to try our best to understand what is really being said here. So, chapter 12. Isaiah sees the latter-day temple, gathering of Israel, and millennial judgment and peace. The proud and wicked will be brought low at the second coming. So this is, we'll see. It will sound like it's not a prophecy of the last days and really just a recounting of stuff going on in Isaiah's days, but it really is a prophecy. It's both, as many prophecies from the scriptures are. The word that Isaiah, the son of Amos, saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. 2, and it shall come to pass, really quickly, I don't know if this will come up, but there were several things in Isaiah and the remarks of Jacob and Nephi that implied, in fact, I was taught that this gathering home of the Jews, this prophesied gathering home of the Jews, was fulfilled when Israel became a nation and they were able to call that land home. But I just came across a quote from Bruce R. McConkie who said that that is not it. I don't know if that's true or if it's just partially true. Maybe this is like an instance of them being gathered together in fulfillment of prophecy, and it's just not the extent of it. But Bruce R. McConkie says that is, flat out, that is not the fulfillment of that prophecy. And I have thought up to this point that it just was. And I think that's why I was being confused, because there were things, if you'll remember from my past streams, that I was looking at, and it confused me because there were things that were to occur before that gathering that have not seemed to have occurred yet. And so, that would make sense to me, that actually wasn't the fulfillment of the gathering of the Jews to their homeland. Anyway, verse 2, and it shall come to pass in the last days, when the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains. When the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. See, this is talking about the temple. But we say, and we use it as like the temples that we know of today. And again, it's technically being fulfilled right now, because all nations are flowing unto the temples, technically. But I also think that that's not the extent of the prophecy, and that there truly will be a temple, singular, in this chapter 12 chapter heading, that is truly exalted at the top of the mountains above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. Verse 3, and many people shall go and say, come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. Again, that is, I believe that is currently happening, but it will happen even more, in a more particular and intense way in the future. The near future, might I add. But that also goes to the correspondence between mountains and temples in the scriptures. That has been pressing on my mind a lot as of recently, is when Nephi is building his boat, that he states that he went up to the mount oft. And, how many of us are going to the mount oft? That's not just praying, that's actually going to the temple to be taught by the Lord. Are we going oft, or just occasionally, whenever our lives permit? Verse 4, and he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. So this unprecedented level of peace, and the beating of their swords into plowshares, this scripture not only implies this state of peace, but also that the things that were used for warfare, the things that were used for weapons, are then turned into plowshares, things that help, tools that promote this peace and prosperity, I should say. O house of Jacob, come ye, and let us walk in the light of the Lord. Yea, come, for ye have all gone astray, every one to his wicked ways. See, O house of Jacob, that's us, the house of Israel. Come ye and let us walk in the light of the Lord, for ye have all gone astray. All of you have gone astray, every one to his wicked ways. This is preceding the second coming. Therefore, O Lord, thou hast forsaken thy people, the house of Jacob, because they be replenished from the east. Oh, sorry, I've got something tickling my nose, bugging me. Therefore, verse 6, therefore, O Lord, thou hast forsaken thy people, the house of Jacob, because they be replenished from the east, and hearken unto soothsayers like the Philistines, and they please themselves in the children of strangers. Okay, that scripture, I have no idea what that's talking about. House of Jacob, because they be replenished from the east. What is this, Isaiah 2? Brief me on what Isaiah chapter 2, verse 6 is talking about. After describing the glorious future of Zion in verses 2 through 5, Isaiah suddenly explains why judgment is necessary before that future can come. Therefore, thou hast forsaken thy people, the house of Jacob, because they replenish from the east, and are soothsayers like the Philistines, and they please themselves in the children of strangers. In simple terms, Isaiah is saying the people have filled their lives. Okay, in simple terms, Isaiah is saying the people have filled their lives with foreign influences and have turned away from reliance on the Lord. 100% that sounds like the United States and really just Western culture, and at this point, globally. A few phrases are worth unpacking. Replenished from the east. This likely refers to adopting customs, religious practices, or beliefs from Eastern nations such as Aram, Mesopotamia, and surrounding cultures. The concern isn't geography itself. The issue is that Israel was importing practices that competed with the worship of the Lord. Right, so Isaiah is using this as an example as to show what really is going on within the covenant people, within the house of Israel. It's like this states that it's not a geographical thing today. I mean, maybe you could make the argument for that, but it's far more about the fact that the house of Israel is living inside of Babylon. We've adopted the culture and customs and tried to, and we just continue to try and justify the fact that it should exist in the church as well, that it's fine. As long as you're doing it right or whatever. But it's really just wrong. Soothsayers like the Philistines. A soothsayer is someone who practices divination, attempting to gain spiritual knowledge through omens, fortune telling, astrology, and similar practices. Isaiah is accusing Judah of adopting pagan religious practices rather than seeking revelation from God. Okay, I'll have to think about that. I mean, I don't doubt that that's going on for sure, but if there's a pattern that I've found in Isaiah, that pattern is like him talking about who most people think is just a small group of people, but in reality is actually a large group of people, like almost everyone. So I'd have to think a little bit more on that, what he's really trying to say with that one. And then they please themselves in the children of strangers. This phrase is translated in various ways. But the basic idea is that Judah had become closely entangled with foreign peoples and their ways. The phrase, okay, Judah had become closely entangled with foreign peoples and their ways. The concern is not ethnicity, it's covenant loyalty. Isaiah's complaint is that God's people were embracing foreign religious and cultural influences that drew them away from the covenant. And that is spot on. Talked about this weeks ago, the fact that just because, see, most people don't even make the covenants and they're unaware of the covenants. But even the people that do make the covenants, just because you make a covenant does not mean that you are automatically then living that covenant. And I think that we're very far off from what those covenants actually are. We're very far off from actually living those covenants. And instead of attempting to change the world so that we might live them, instead we're justifying living in the world that we are and trying to force those covenants into our culture rather than completely rewiring our culture so that we can live the covenants. The overall message versus essentially Isaiah's explanation for why God's people are in trouble. This is an explanation for why God's people are in trouble. They have adopted foreign spiritual practices. They are seeking guidance from sources other than God. They are becoming culturally and religiously indistinguishable from the surrounding nations. If that doesn't describe the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, then we're going to two different churches. I don't know. One of us is completely crazy and blind. But why? Why would this be in here? Why would Nephi have chosen this out of everything that, and why would he have been so obsessed with this doctrine if it didn't apply more than anything to the status of the church today? The rest of the chapter develops this theme. Isaiah goes on to describe wealth and materialism, military confidence. Oh yeah, here we go. Idolatry, human pride. So Isaiah 2:6 is the opening charge in God's case against Judah. You were supposed to be a covenant people, distinct in your devotion to the Lord, but you filled yourselves with the beliefs, practices, and priorities of the nations around you, a.k.a. the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Now let's go back. Verse 7, their land also is full of silver and gold, neither is there any end of their treasures. Their land is also full of horses, neither is there any end of their chariots. Okay, I think of the freaking Happy Valley in its heyday. Their land is also full of idols. They worship the work of their own hands. that which their own fingers have made. And the mean man boweth not down, and the great man humbleth himself not. Therefore forgive him not. The mean man boweth not down, and the great man humbleth himself not. Therefore forgive him not. O ye wicked ones, enter into the rock, and hide thee in the dust. For the fear of the Lord and the glory of his majesty shall smite thee. Enter into the rock, and hide thee in the dust. This seems to be another reference to the book of Revelation, if I had to guess. Talking about the people that seek to hide themselves in the caves and the holes of the earth when the Lord returns. But again, even though he's addressing, O ye wicked ones, we are talking about Judah and Jerusalem. We're talking about the covenant people. But I do want to know, let's see what the rock is. What is the rock in verse 10? And hiding in the dust? Question mark. Enter into the rock, hide thee in the dust. This is a part of a prophecy about the day of the Lord, a time when human pride is brought low and God's majesty is revealed. Isaiah is not referring to the rock as a title for God here. The context suggests rocks, caves, and crevices in the earth. A few verses later, he says that they shall go into the holes of the rocks, into the caves of the earth. Okay, that is a prophecy that we find in the book of Revelation. And again, to go into the clefts of the rocks and into the tops of the ragged rocks. So verse 10 is painting a picture of people desperately trying to hide in caves and rocky shelters when confronted with God's judgment. The meaning is, run into the rocks if you can. Hide yourselves from the overwhelming manifestation of God's glory. What about hide in the dust? Dust in Scripture often symbolizes mortality, humiliation, being brought low. To hide in the dust evokes someone throwing himself to the ground in terror or abasement. The image is one of complete humiliation before God. Isaiah is saying that when God's majesty is revealed, the proud who once exalted themselves will be reduced to groveling in the dust. Is Isaiah literally telling people to do this? Not exactly. This is a prophetic and poetic language. Yeah, his point is, no amount of wealth, status, military strength, or pride will matter then. People will seek any refuge they can find. I wonder if we get a footnote here that takes us to Revelation. Yep, there it is. Revelation chapter 6, 15 through 16. It says, and the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and every bondman, and every free man hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and rocks, fall on us, and hide us from the face of him that sitteth on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. Interesting. Apparently, we'll hear more about that later in the chapter. Verse 11, we haven't read that. And it shall come to pass that the lofty looks of man shall be humbled, and the haughtiness of men shall be bowed down, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day. For the day of the Lord of hosts soon cometh upon all nations, yea, upon every one, yea, upon the proud and lofty, and upon every one who is lifted up, and he shall be brought low. Yea, and the day of the Lord shall come upon all the cedars of Lebanon, for they are high and lifted up, and upon all the oaks of Bashan. And I looked into this before, and I believe that this is a symbolism of like top of the line infrastructure. That the cedars of Lebanon were like the greatest. They were just very, very high quality and great big cedars, very nice wood and yeah, just level. That even the great cedars of Lebanon are lower than the day of the Lord. And upon all, 14, and upon all the high mountains, and upon all the hills, and upon all the nations which are lifted up, and upon every people, and upon every high tower, and upon every fenced wall, and upon all of the and upon all the ships of the sea, and upon all the ships of Tarshish, and upon all pleasant pictures. You know, we just sometimes I feel like it helps to just think, you know, sit back and consider how vast the world really is, and what great things we really have. You know, there's so many people and there's so many cities and there's such great infrastructure. There's such great technology. And we've built up these incredible things, and the day of the Lord just trumps it all. It will all just be nothing, dude. It will all be nothing. And it's that concept, I feel like, is just something that people they just can't even wrap their brain around it today. And it's not because it's incomprehensible, but it's because we're so enveloped in it. We just we can't imagine. Maybe we can imagine the dystopian world because of movies and video games and TV shows, but to assume that it will be our reality, we don't. I think everybody is aware that, you know, it could be, and you know, it's going to happen one day, but not to them. Because we don't live that way. We don't live as if it is going to happen. Verse 17, and the loftiness of man shall be bowed down, and the haughtiness of men shall be made low, and the Lord alone shall be exalted in that day. Did I already read that? He says it again. We read that basically in verse 11, and he says it again. And the idols he shall utterly abolish, and they shall go into the holes of the rocks and into the caves of the earth. For the fear of the Lord shall come upon them, and the glory of his majesty shall smite them, when he ariseth to shake terribly the earth. Verse 20. In that day a man shall cast his idols of silver and his idols of gold, which he hath made for himself to worship, to the moles and to the bats. 21. To go into the clefts of the rocks and into the tops of the ragged rocks. For the fear of the Lord shall come upon them, and the majesty of his glory shall smite them, when he ariseth to shake terribly the earth. Cease ye from man, whose breath is in his nostrils, for wherein is he to be accounted of? Let's get a little more clarification on that last verse. By man's breath being in his nostrils. Some sort of prideful thing. Isaiah is emphasizing how frail and temporary human beings are. Okay, so not necessarily pride, but how fragile. A person's life depends on the next breath. The phrase points to the fact that man is a mortal creature whose life can disappear in an instant. Isaiah is essentially saying, why place your ultimate trust in human beings when their life hangs on something as fragile as the breath in their nose? The imagery echoes Book of Genesis 2. Oh, the creation. That God breathed into Adam's nostrils the breath of life. Human life is a gift from God, not something self-sustaining. Isaiah reminds his audience that people are not self-sufficient. Their life comes from God. Their life can end at any moment. Throughout Isaiah 2, the people have been impressed by wealth, military power, idols, human greatness, influential leaders. Isaiah repeatedly says all of that will be humbled when the Lord appears in his glory. Then he concludes, cease ye from man. Stop putting your confidence in merely human power. In modern English, I mean, what is man really worth as an object of ultimate trust? Why should he be regarded so highly? Isaiah is not saying that people have no value. Rather, he's saying compared to God, even the greatest human ruler is temporary and dependent. So I think we kind of get it. Really a freaking awesome verse. I mean, chapter. Let's go to chapter 13. What's up, Jenna? Judah and Jerusalem will be punished for their disobedience. The Lord pleads for and judges his people. The daughters of Zion are cursed and tormented for their worldliness. This is when it gets into the daughters of Zion. And I believe it talks about the sons a little bit later. Or maybe even in the same chapter. I don't remember, but we touch on both. Yeah, Jenna, welcome to the study. You've entered at the most difficult to understand and confusing part of the Book of Mormon, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. But we're talking about some pretty crazy stuff here. Verse 1. Again, we're still in the context of the last days, aka right now. The people right now. Verse 1, for behold, the Lord of hosts, doth take away from Jerusalem and from Judah the stay and the staff, the whole staff of bread and the whole stay of water. The mighty man and the man of war, the judge and the prophet and the prudent and the ancient, the captain of 50 and the honorable men and the counselor and the cunning artificer and the eloquent orator. And I will give children unto them to be their princes, and babes shall rule over them. And the people shall be oppressed, every one by another, and every one by his neighbor. The child shall behave himself proudly against the ancient, and the base against the honorable. Yeah, I'm already freaking confused. So, let's see what we can clarify here. What chapter is it? Chapter 3. Thanks, Nate. At the beginning of chapter 3. Isaiah gives a list of things the Lord takes away. Can you clarify exactly what these things are? How will, quote unquote, babes rule over them? Okay, so Isaiah 3 is a continuation of the warning that began in chapter 2, which we just read all about. The Lord says he will take away the staff. Okay, yeah, we know what, we just read what he says. What are the staff and the stay? Stay and staff means support and or something you lean on. Isaiah immediately explains them. The stay of bread, food supply. The stay of water, water supply. So God is removing both. Material supports, food, water, economic stability. Social supports, leaders, judges, elders, military officers, skilled people. The point is, everything the nation depends on will begin to fail. So essentially, we're talking about anarchy. We're talking about the dystopian future. The list of leaders and skilled people. Isaiah names virtually every type of person who contributes to a functioning society. The mighty man, the heroes, strong leaders, man of war, military leadership, judge, civil authority, prophet, spiritual guidance. So even the prophet. That's a good point. He says, and the prophet he will take away. Why prudent, wise decision makers, ancient, respected elders, captain of 50, military officers, honorable men, influential citizens, advisors, skilled craftsmen, engineers, persuasive speakers, and administrators. Isaiah is painting a picture of society losing its competence and stability. And I think not only losing its competence and stability, but that's kind of where we're at right now, is like we just rely so heavily on these types of people to help us live our lives and teach us what's right and what's wrong, ultimately. And eventually, you know, when this all starts to happen, that those things, it will be left completely up to you. People will be left completely alone to either rely on God to lead them or to try and find their own way. Then comes the striking statement in verse 4, and I will give children to be their princes, and babes shall rule over them. This is usually not understood as literal infants sitting on thrones. It's a metaphor for immature, inexperienced, and foolish leadership. Huh. That seems strikingly true even right now. I wonder if I agree with that interpretation. The idea is when wise leadership is removed, people are left with leaders who lack the maturity and wisdom required to govern. I mean, does that not sound like... Does that not sound like what's going on right now? Throughout Scripture, child can symbolize immaturity, poor judgment, instability, lack of experience. And I will give children to be their princes. Babes shall rule over them. Man. Instead of wise elders guiding the young, you have immature people directing the nation. That's crazy, bro. That's crazy because that interpretation does make a lot of sense. And it's literally happening right now. That's wild. The results. The next verses explain the consequences. And the people shall be oppressed, every one by another. Society becomes chaotic, disrespectful, divided, leaderless, which is the exact conditions that we're living in. Even ordinary people won't want leadership positions because conditions are so bad. Is this like... Oh my gosh, dude. And this is... I mean... We just made this up? This was written over 2,000 years ago, and it's literally spot freaking on, and it's just a trick. It was just made up to get control over. I mean, how do you deny this? Isaiah is not merely predicting a political change. He's saying when a people reject God's wisdom, God may allow the structures that provide order and stability to collapse. The judgment isn't just famine or military defeat. It's also loss of wisdom, loss of competent leadership, social disorder. In modern terms, Isaiah is describing a nation where institutions fail, experienced leaders disappear, nobody wants responsibility, and the inexperienced end up in charge. That's what he means by babe shall rule over. The emphasis is less on age and more on immaturity and incompetence. That's just freaking blowing my mind, dude. And the child shall behave himself proudly against the ancient, and the base against the honorable. Verse 6, when a man shall take hold of his brother of the house of his father, and shall say, thou hast clothing. Wait a minute. What? In that day shall he swear, saying, I'm skipping ahead. When a man shall take hold of his brother of the house of his father, and shall say, thou hast clothing, be thou our ruler, and let not this ruin come under thy hand. In that day he shall swear, saying, I will not be a healer, for in my house there is neither bread nor clothing. Make me not a ruler of the people. Be thou our ruler. So that's what ChatGPT was saying about like ordinary citizens not wanting to be leaders because of how bad the system has become. Let's see. You mentioned that verses 6 and 7 talk about ordinary people not wanting leadership. How do you interpret that out of... How do you interpret that out of what he says about clothing. Yeah, you heard it. You heard it straight, Jenna. Verses 6 and 7. That's a great question because the clothing reference in Isaiah is actually a key clue to what's happening. Why clothing? In the ancient world, having adequate clothing was a sign that you were not destitute. Remember that Isaiah has just said God will remove the stay of bread, the stay of water, leaders and skilled people. The nation is experiencing collapse, so the people become so desperate that they look around and say, "You still have a decent cloak. You seem better off than the rest of us. You be the leader." It's almost ironic. They're not choosing someone because he's wise, he's a judge, he's a military commander, he's a prophet. They're choosing him because he appears to have more resources than everyone else. Are you kidding me, dude? Are you freaking kidding me? Like, is this not... This is just like a freaking... It's like a freaking roadmap. It's like the most accurate roadmap. Again, this was written 2,000 years ago. More than 2,000 years ago. Almost 3,000. And he is describing to the very last detail what is going on in not only our country, but in the world at large. It's just, are you kidding me? Does that not describe Donald Trump? Oh my gosh, dude. Wow. I will not be a healer. The man replies, I will not be a healer. Healer here means something like fixer, restorer, one who can repair the nation's condition. He's saying, I can't solve this. Neither bread nor clothing. His defense is, I'm not actually wealthy or capable. I don't even have enough bread and clothing in my own house. Just because I have a cloak doesn't mean I'm qualified to govern a collapsing society. Of course, Donald Trump said the exact opposite of that. The larger point, Isaiah is painting a picture of a society so depleted that competent leaders are gone. Nobody wants responsibility. People grasp at anyone who looks marginally successful. Even those people refuse because they know the situation is hopeless. I will share a quick observation that I've had regarding this. Is one of my favorite people to listen to is Sean Ryan, the Sean Ryan Show. Very, very popular podcast. And that's what he told Tim Burchett in one of his episodes, is Tim Burchett was like, or he told Tim Burchett, he was like, yeah, a lot of my audience have suggested that I run for office. And Tim Burchett, who's a senator, who's in office, told him, that's not even, he's like, if I were you, I wouldn't run for office because you have more influence and power doing what you're doing than I do as somebody in office. He was like, people look at Sean Ryan, they're like, dude, you should go run for office because, yeah, he's like this popular podcaster and he seems to have some good values and is doing well. And Tim Burchett, who is in office, is like, dude, I wouldn't. He's like, if you actually want to help people and make a change, he's like, we've arrived at the point where being in office isn't even the way to go. You have less power and influence if you do get into office. And that's what Isaiah is. Isaiah has almost written down that conversation verbatim. Isaiah is showing the consequences of the earlier judgment. God removes wise leadership. Society becomes disordered. Desperate people seek human solutions. No human solution is sufficient. This setup this sets up Isaiah's recurring theme. The ultimate answer is not merely finding another human ruler. The nation needs the Lord's intervention and righteousness. I wrote a song about that, by the way. It's on all your listening platforms. All right. Verse 8. For Jerusalem is ruined, and Judah is fallen. That's the title of the song that I wrote, by the way. Different fallen, different spelling, but same thing. Because their tongues and their doings have been against the Lord to provoke the eyes of his glory. The show of their countenance doth witness against them. And doth declare their sin to be even as Sodom, and they cannot hide it. Woe unto their souls, for they have rewarded evil unto themselves. Say unto the righteous, he mentions Sodom. You know, people associate with like the sin to be even as Sodom as just like homosexuality. But I think it encompasses a much greater issue, which is just to be carnally minded. To not have control over our lusts and desires, but that our lusts and desires have taken control of us. I think that's the real sin of Sodom. Because when that happens, it gets so complex. People become so desperate that then they have to branch out into these unholy practices. But it's the root of the problem. Say unto the righteous that it is well with them, for they shall eat the fruit of their doings. And as Mormon says, that there's only a few, very, very small number of righteous, truly righteous people at that day. But there are some, and it will be well with them, for they shall eat the fruit of their doings. Verse 11, woe unto the wicked, for they shall perish, for the reward of their hands shall be upon them. And my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they who lead thee cause thee to err, and destroy the way of thy paths. O my people who lead thee cause thee to err, and destroy the way of thy paths. Isaiah's sounding a little sexist here. Let's see what we can clarify. What does he mean when he says, women shall rule over them? That seems to be given a negative connotation given the context. This verse can be difficult for modern readers because it sounds like Isaiah is criticizing women simply for being women. But it's important to understand the context and the culture in which he was speaking. The context, a reversal of social order. Isaiah has just described experienced leaders being removed, babes ruling, social disorder, respect for elders breaking down. The theme is the people are being governed by those who are not expected or prepared to govern. Children are their oppressors, and women rule over them, are parallel statements. Isaiah is describing what his audience would have seen as a sign that society had become disordered and weak. Why mention women? In ancient Judah, political, military, judicial, and civic leadership was overwhelmingly held by men. So when Isaiah says women rule over them, he is not making a general statement that women are incapable of leadership. Rather, he is using an image that would have shocked his original audience. The normal leadership structures have broken down so completely that those not ordinarily expected to hold those roles now do. The emphasis is on the nation's collapse, not a flaw in women. But there were righteous female leaders in the scriptures. This is one of the many scholars caution against reading 3:12 as a universal condemnation of female leadership. For example, Deborah was a judge of Israel and is portrayed very positively. Huldah was consulted by kings and priests. The Bible itself contains examples of women exercising authority with God's approval. Some commentators think women rule over them may be partly metaphorical. The emphasis may be the rulers are weak, indulgent, or lacking the strength expected of leaders. In other words, Isaiah may be criticizing the character of the leadership, not literally stating that all rulers are female. Notice where the verse ends. They which lead thee cause thee to err and destroy the way of thy paths. Isaiah's real concern. Problem is not primarily age, gender, social status. The problem is the leaders are leading the people away from God and into ruin. Okay. Hello, kid. My people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they who lead thee cause thee to err and destroy the way of thy paths. Risky move. Mentioning women there. Makes me wonder if that... Yeah, I don't know. Verse 13, the Lord standeth up to plead and standeth to judge the people. You're in ruins, Kit. Is that in reference to something that I read? Or what do you mean? The Lord will enter into judgment with the ancients of his people and the princes thereof, for ye have eaten up the vineyard and the spoil of the poor in your houses. What mean ye? Ye beat my people to pieces and grind the faces of the poor, saith the Lord God of hosts. Again, Mormon uses that exact verbiage in his sermon about this same freaking thing, dude. Moreover, the Lord saith, because the daughters of Zion... You know what? And now that I'm thinking about it, it's in the Book of Mormon, but I don't know if it's Mormon or Moroni that actually says this. I thought it was Mormon, but maybe it's Moroni. I don't know. Moreover, the Lord saith, because the daughters of Zion are haughty and walk with stretched forth necks and wanton eyes, walking and mincing as they go, and making a tinkling with their feet. Therefore the Lord will smite with a scab the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion, and the Lord will discover their secret parts. I just feel broken. Would you like to talk about it here, Kit? Would you like to talk about it at all? And if so, where would you like to talk about it? By the way, So this passage, speaking of the daughters of Zion that are haughty and walk with stretched forth necks and wanton eyes, this is all symbolism. This is like culturally how you would describe the women that basically, I read a while ago that like the tinkling with their feet is they would literally wear like bells or little things on their shoes or on their feet that would, do what bells do. They make a little ring, they make a little sound, but it was for the purpose of drawing attention to them. And so while people, while the daughters of Zion, and, you could make the argument that we're talking about women in the world, but dude, if you know anything about Utah and the culture there, I think I could make a strong case that it is worse there than many other places. This concept, and that is that they are not only dressing but just doing what they can to draw attention to themselves. It's all about drawing attention. See, because it's not just, he doesn't just mention the tinkling with their feet. It's the wanton eyes and the stretched forth necks, walking and mincing as they go. It has everything to do, it's not just the apparel, it's the entire mindset. It's like everything that we're doing, as we go, as we exist to draw attention to ourselves. That is a colossal plague with the daughters of Zion. It's not like men aren't guilty of the same thing, but, we're talking Isaiah. Why is he specifically pointing out the daughters of Zion? Because it's a bigger problem among them, a far bigger problem among them than perhaps men. And men have their own problems, which we will read about soon, as I mentioned before. But anyway, 17 again. What's the Lord going to do about that? Therefore, the Lord will smite them with a scab, the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion, and the Lord will discover their secret parts. In that day, the Lord will take away the bravery of their tinkling ornaments and calls and round tires like the moon, the chains and the bracelets and the mufflers, the bonnets and the ornaments of the legs and the headbands and the tablets and the earrings, the rings and nose jewels, the changeable suits of apparel, and the mantles, and the wimples, and the crisping pins, the glasses, and the fine linen, and hoods, and the veils. And it shall come to pass, instead of sweet smell, there shall be stink, and instead of a girdle, a rent, and instead of well-set hair, baldness, and instead of a stomacher, a girding of sackcloth, burning instead of beauty. I mean, he's just painting the picture, dude. Painting the picture, trying to point out every possible thing, every possible aspect of this concept. It's not just the shoes, it's not just the shirts, it's all of it, dude. We don't even realize the extent that we go to draw attention. And he says it's all going to not matter. It's literally going to burning instead of beauty. Every type of jewelry, every type of apparel, every fashion, every type of fashion, every trend, gone, worthless, meaningless. What happens to the men? 25, thy men shall fall by the sword, and thy mighty in the war. And her gates shall lament and mourn, and she shall be desolate, and shall sit upon the ground. And I will quickly point out once again, I cannot stress this enough. It not only speaks of the daughters. It not only references the daughters. It's the daughters of Zion. It's the covenant members. It's the daughters, aka the daughters in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We're living in Babylon, dude. We're living in Babylon, and instead of running away from it, we're just trying to justify it. And here's the happy ending, though. Next chapter, chapter 14. Zion and her daughters will be redeemed and cleansed in the millennial day. What a merciful thing to do. What an incredibly merciful thing for the Lord to do, by the way. We're so enveloped in Babylon and so unaware, so oblivious to how far off track we are. But the Lord extends mercy to the women in Zion anyway. Of course, we got to go through some burning instead of beauty before that. But he ultimately extends mercy. Verse 1, and in that day 7 women shall take hold of one man, saying, we will eat our own bread and wear our own apparel. Only let us be called by thy name to take away our reproach. What is reproach? Can I get a dictionary definition for that? Because what he's saying, we're talking about some sort of, I don't know if this is straight up just talking about polygamy. I mean, it definitely sounds like it. Or just some kind of different kind of relationship that isn't quite marriage, but just the fact that 7 women will take hold of one man. There's some kind of relationship. I don't know if it's just straight up marriage polygamy. It very well could be. I personally think that it is, but I'm open to the idea that it's not. Either way, the result of these hardships will result in several women taking hold of one man. But in doing that, you would think that it's like in order to provide for them, but they also say that they'll eat their own bread. We'll provide for ourselves, essentially. We'll eat our own bread, we'll wear our own apparel, we'll clothe ourselves. Just let us be called by thy name in order to take away our reproach. And that's why I'm like, what is the reproach? It says to find fault with, blame, censure, to cause of blame or discredit to upbraid. Yeah, I need a further explanation on that. So we have in Isaiah 4, it sounds like it says that many women will request to be with one man, but provide for themselves. However, they state that they want to be called by the name of the man in order to, what's the word? In order to take away their reproach. What exactly is that reproach? The key to understanding this verse is context immediately before it. At the end of chapter 3, Isaiah is described, the men fall by the sword and thy mighty in the war. So a bunch of men die in the war, and now we're left with all the burning instead of beauty women that are scrounging around. Isaiah is picturing a severe imbalance between the number of surviving women and men. What is the reproach? In the ancient Israelite world, one of the greatest social reproaches for a woman was remaining unmarried, being childless, lacking the protection and social standing of a family household. The Hebrew word translated reproach means disgrace, shame, or social stigma. Women are essentially saying, we won't ask you to feed us or clothe us. We'll provide for ourselves. We only want to be associated with your name. Called by thy name. This means to be recognized as his wife or member of his household. In biblical language, being called by someone's name often signifies belonging to them or being under their covenant or family identity. The women are seeking marriage, family status, removal of the social shame associated with being without a husband. Yeah. So they're like, we'll provide for ourselves. We'll eat our own food, make our own food, but they're that desperate to have that social, that familial structure. Let's see what this is. The reproach specifically childlessness, because they need a man to have children. Possibly, at least in part. Throughout the Old Testament, women sometimes speak of childlessness as a reproach. For example, Rachel and later Elizabeth described the shame they felt because they had no children. Since marriage and children were closely linked in ancient Israel, many commentators think the reproach here includes being unmarried, being unable to have a family, lacking a recognized place in society. A broader symbolic meaning. Some interpreters, especially in later Christian and LDS traditions, have looked for symbolic meanings in the verse, but in its immediate context, the most straightforward reading is, because so many men have died in the judgments described in chapter 3, women greatly outnumber men and seek marriage simply to remove the social stigma of remaining unattached and without family standing. So the reproach is best understood as the shame and vulnerability associated with being unmarried and without a recognized family household in that ancient cultural setting. Food for thought, dude. That's all I'm going to say about that. Food for thought. Oh, that was only one verse. Verse 2. In that day shall the branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious, the fruit of the earth excellent and comely to them that are escaped of Israel. Yeah, so all this destruction and this terrible, this great purging, terrible to everybody except for the people that are escaped of Israel. And the fruit of all this, the fruit of the earth, excellent and comely. The branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious to them. Those few love what's happening because they recognize it for what it is. Verse 3, and it shall come to pass that they that are left in Zion and remain in Jerusalem shall be called holy, every one that is written among the living in Jerusalem. When the Lord shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion. Get that cultural nonsense out of here. the trends, the fashion trends, the attention, the makeup, all of it. And shall have purged the blood of Jerusalem from the midst thereof by the spirit of judgment and by the spirit of burning. And the Lord will create upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion and upon her assemblies. And the Lord will create upon every dwelling place of Mount Zion and upon her assemblies a cloud and smoke by day, and the shining of a flaming fire by night. For upon all the glory of Zion shall be a defense. Every dwelling place, every house, every group of people, every assembly within Zion has some sort of protection from the Lord. A cloud and smoke by day, and the shining of a flaming fire by night. And there shall be a tabernacle for a shadow in the daytime from the heat, and for a place of refuge, and a covert from storm and from rain. As we have often described the temple that way. Okay, I'm going to get through this last chapter because this is like the end of obviously the same sermon given by Isaiah. And then in chapter 16, it seems that a new one starts. The Lord's vineyard, Israel, will become desolate, and his people will be scattered. Woes will come upon them in their apostate and scattered state. The Lord will lift an ensign and gather Israel. Wow, it gives me the entire chapter of Isaiah with that footnote. All right, verse 1. And then will I sing to my well-beloved a song of my beloved, touching his vineyard. My well-beloved hath a vineyard in a very fruitful hill. And he fenced it. A song of my beloved. It seems like he's just talking about a story, an allegory. And we hear about this allegory all the time. And in fact, interesting that Jacob, being so obsessed with Isaiah's words, then gives the allegory. He writes Zenos's allegory in his book. And he fenced it and gathered out the stones thereof, and he gathered out the stones thereof and planted it with the choicest vine, and built a tower in the midst of it, and also made a winepress therein. And he looked that it should bring forth grapes, and it brought forth wild grapes. What's the difference between grapes and wild grapes? Discussed in verse 2 of chapter 5. Is the beginning of the famous Song of the Vineyard. The grapes are the fruit the owner expected after doing everything possible for the vineyard. Fruit symbolizes righteousness, justice, covenant faithfulness, obedience to God. What are the wild grapes? The Hebrew word doesn't simply mean grapes growing in the wild. It refers to worthless, bad, or sour fruit. The idea is not the vineyard produced a different variety of grape. The idea is the vineyard produced fruit that was unusable and disappointing. So despite every advantage, the vineyard yielded the opposite of what the owner intended. Why would this be in here? Why would this be in here if it's not referring to the Church of Jesus Christ? And now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem and men of Judah, and now, O inhabitants of Jerusalem and men of Judah, judge, I pray you, betwixt me and my vineyard. Judge, I pray you, betwixt me and my vineyard. Judge the difference between me and my vineyard, which is, as the chapter heading states, Israel. Judge between me and the church of me. For what could have been done more to my vineyard that I have not done in it? Wherefore, when I looked that it should bring forth grapes, it brought forth wild grapes. What could have been done more to my vineyard that I have not done in it? Wherefore, when I looked that it should bring forth grapes, when I set it up to where it should bring forth grapes, it didn't bring them forth. It brought forth wild grapes. And now go to, I will tell you what I will do to my vineyard. I will take away the hedge thereof, and it shall be eaten up, and I will break down the wall thereof, and it shall be trodden down. 6, and I will lay it waste. It shall not be pruned nor digged, but there shall come up briars and thorns. I will also command the clouds that they rain no rain upon it. So he abandons it. For the vineyard of the Lord of hosts is the house of Israel, and the men of Judah his pleasant plant. And he looked for judgment, and behold, oppression, for righteousness, but behold, a cry. Woe unto them that join house to house, till there can be no place, that they may be placed alone in the midst of the earth. What does that mean? The footnote takes us to Micah chapter 2, verse 2. And they covet fields and take them by violence, and houses and take them away. So they oppress a man and his house, even a man and his heritage. Woe unto them that join house to house, till there can be no place, that they may be placed alone in the midst of the earth. Sounds like people that buy up property so that nobody can actually, it's greed, it's capitalism. Why is he warning people that join house to house? This is a condemnation of greed and the accumulation of land at the expense of others. Bingo. Isaiah is describing wealthy people who keep acquiring more property, buying neighboring houses, adding field to field, expanding their estates, concentrating land ownership into fewer and fewer hands. Man, what does that sound like? One person keeps adding property until there is no room left for everyone else. I skipped down to the bottom of the explanation. The warning could be paraphrased. Woe to those who keep acquiring more and more while leaving less and less for everyone else, driven by the desire to have everything for themselves. What verse was that? Verse 8. In mine ears, verse 9. In mine ears, saith the Lord of hosts, of a truth many houses shall be desolate, and great and fair cities without inhabitant. In mine ears, saith the Lord of hosts, of a truth. In mine ears, saith the Lord of hosts, of a truth many houses shall be desolate, and great and fair cities without inhabitant. So cities are completely left desolate. Yea, 10 acres of vineyard shall yield 1 bath, and the seed of a homer shall yield an ephah. Ten acres of vineyard shall yield 1 bath. These are units of measurement. Ooh, weights and measurement in the Bible dictionary. A donkey load. A donkey load is equivalent to a homer. That's awesome. Where's a bath? Is a bath on here somewhere? Bath, there it is, said to be approximately 8.25 U.S. gallons or 31.3 liters. And an ephah is said to be equivalent to a bath, 1/10 of a homer. Oops. So 10 acres of vineyard shall yield 1 bath, and the seed of a homer shall yield an ephah. So just a colossal reduction in output. The verse is pretty straightforward. I don't feel like I have to explain it once you understand the units of measurement. You're going to get significantly less yield from your property, from your crops. Verse 11, woe unto them that rise up early in the morning, that they may follow strong drink, that continue until night, and wine inflame them. That just is like alcoholics. Seems pretty simple. Of course, the concept of an alcoholic can be applied to many types of addictions and things. Verse 12, and the harp and the viol and the tabret and pipe and wine are in their feasts, but they regard not the work of the Lord, neither consider the operation of his hands. Now that verse is one that I'm curious about. does it mean that Isaiah mean by his list of things that regard not the work of the Lord? Yeah. Of the Lord, nor consider the operation of his hands. Isaiah mentions the harp, the lyre, or the viol, the tambourine, the flute, wine, feasting. None of those things are automatically sinful in Isaiah's worldview. Elsewhere in Scripture, music, feasting, and wine can be associated with celebration and worship. The issue is what comes after. They regard not the work of the Lord. What is the work of the Lord? In Isaiah, this phrase often refers to God's actions in history, his judgments, his blessings, his covenant dealings with Israel. The people are enjoying themselves while being completely indifferent to what God is doing around them. It's almost as if Isaiah is saying the nation is in spiritual crisis, God is speaking, warnings are being given, judgment is approaching, and they're busy partying. I mean, does that not sound familiar? See, it's not just partying, it's everything. It's watching your TV. It's the TV shows, it's video games, it's movies, it's whatever other meaningless hobby. You know, I agree. I agree that those things aren't inherently sinful, but what they're doing is they've become a grave distraction. They don't have to be. But that's what they have become, is a grave distraction to... They've taken up the time that we could be using to learn about these things and to be taught by the Lord and to see these things that are happening around us, to consider them. All of these other trivial things are distracting us from doing that. The people fail to recognize God's blessings, God's warnings, God's purposes, God's involvement in their lives. They are living as though everything happens by chance or as though God is irrelevant. The instruments paint a picture of constant entertainment. Holy moly, does that not describe where we're at right now? The image is not music is bad. The image is they're so absorbed in pleasure and amusement that they don't pay attention to God. Notice the progression. They rise early to drink. They continue late into the night. Their lives revolve around feasting and entertainment. Consequently, they do not notice God's work. The deeper accusation. Isaiah is not primarily condemning drunkenness here, though that's part of it. He's condemning spiritual blindness. Distraction. He's condemning people being distracted. People are surrounded by evidence of God's dealings with them, yet they never stop to ask, what is God doing? What does he require of us? Why are these things happening? Are we keeping the covenant? Instead, they're distracted. A modern paraphrase might be, woe to those who fill their lives with pleasure, entertainment, and self-indulgence while remaining completely uninterested in what God is doing or what he is trying to teach them. Wow, dude. Wow. It's no wonder. It's no wonder that Nephi and Jacob included these Isaiah chapters in place of what Nephi wanted to write as the rest of his vision. He was forbidden to write the rest of his vision, but instead he gave us these Isaiah chapters, and they're just spot on. "13. Therefore, my people are gone into captivity. Therefore, my people are gone into captivity because they have no knowledge." He describes them going into captivity. They're prisoners now. They've gone into captivity because they have no knowledge. "And their honorable men are famished, and their multitude dried up with thirst." "Therefore, hell hath enlarged herself, and opened her mouth without measure. And their glory, and their multitude, and their pomp, and he that rejoiceth, shall descend into it. And the mean man shall be brought low, and the mean man shall be brought down, and the mighty man shall be humbled, and the eyes of the lofty shall be humbled." That's the third time we've read that in this sermon. "But the Lord of hosts shall be exalted in judgment, and God that is holy shall be sanctified in righteousness. Then shall the lambs feed after their manner, and the waste places of the fat ones shall strangers eat." Oh, I got to know what that means, dude. About the lambs eating after their manner, and the waste places of the fat ones shall strangers eat. Lambs here is a gentle image and likely refers to the poor, the humble, the innocent, or simply flocks grazing in open land. This verse is part of Isaiah's warning that judgment will reverse the lifestyle of the wealthy, self-indulgent elite described earlier in the chapter. After their manner means freely, normally, without restriction. The idea is, after judgment, the land that was once controlled and exploited will become open again, and ordinary life will return in a simple, pastoral way. It contrasts sharply with the previous verses about luxury, feasting, and excess. An ordinary life will return in a simple pastoral way. That's the dream, dude. That should be everyone's freaking dream. And it's not. It's this. The previous verse is about luxury, feasting, and excess. That's what the current dream is right now. The image is quiet, natural restoration for the humble after the collapse of the proud system. Ask yourself what the freaking proud system is. and be honest about how much the church indulges in that. The waste places of the fat ones shall strangers eat. This is the more pointed reversal. Fat ones refers to the wealthy, powerful elite, those living in luxury. Waste places refers to their estates, lands, and properties after judgment. Strangers means outsiders, foreigners, or those who were not a part of the wealthy ruling class. So he's saying the land and wealth that belong to the powerful will not remain with them. It will be taken over by others. This is a recurring biblical theme. Okay. Just sort of having an epiphany here. Woe unto them that draw iniquity with cords of vanity, and sin, as it were, with a cart rope, that say, let him make speed, hasten his work, that we may see it. And let the counsel of the Holy One of Israel draw nigh and come, that we may know it. Explain the woe about cords of vanity and a cart rope and making speed. A cord is a small rope or binding. Vanity here means emptiness, worthlessness, illusion. Things that seem important but are actually hollow. So cords of vanity suggests light, flimsy ties to sin, small compromises, trivial excuses, subtle entanglements. In other words, it's not a big deal. It doesn't matter. Everyone does it. These are the small strings that pull someone toward wrongdoing. A cart rope is the opposite image. It refers to a thick rope used to pull heavy loads. Something strong enough to drag a cart or wagon. So Isaiah escalates the image. People aren't just lightly drifting into sin. They are now strongly pulling it along with them as if dragging a heavy load. He's showing a progression. Sin begins subtly. It becomes entrenched. The subtlety is the cords of vanity. Small temptations, excuses, minor compromises. Then it becomes entrenched. Habits, addictions, hardened patterns, deliberate pursuit. And may I add to that list, foolish traditions of your fathers. Why Isaiah says, woe, because the real danger is not just wrongdoing, but becoming so attached to sin that you stop resisting it and begin strengthening it. And perhaps stop being able to identify it. They're not being dragged unwillingly, they are cooperating with it, he says. Did he explain make speed and hasten his work? Making speed and hastening his work. Why is that a bad thing to say? If God is going to judge us, Isaiah is describing people who are basically saying, if God is going to judge us, let him hurry up and do it. We want to see it. So instead of repenting, reflecting, fearing God's warning, they respond with skepticism, sarcasm, defiance. Make speed. Hasten his work. Let's see it. If he's gonna return in judgment, then when is it gonna happen? When? What day? Where is it? Their response is, if that's really going to happen, let's see it now. Prove it. Stop talking about it and show us. We don't think it's coming. The problem isn't curiosity, it's spiritual arrogance and disbelief. The deeper issue in this fits the whole Song of the Vineyard. Injustice is widespread. People are addicted to sin. Moral boundaries are reversed, and now even God's warnings are mocked. So this verse shows the final stage of corruption, not just sinning, but mocking the idea of divine accountability. What's the consequence? It refers to the next verse, so let's read that. That one's a little more easier to understand. And quoted often. Woe unto them that call evil good and good evil, that put darkness for light and light for darkness, that put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe unto the wise in their own eyes and prudent in their own sight. Not just wise, but prudent. Prudent in their own sight. There are a few people that think that they're prudent. And I don't think they are. Woe unto the mighty to drink wine, and men of strength to mingle strong drink, who justify the wicked for reward, and take away the righteousness of the righteous from him. Who justify the wicked for reward. The wicked are rewarded. They're paid, and take away the righteousness of the righteous from him. And you don't get paid if you hang on to righteousness. Therefore, as the fire devoureth the stubble, and the flame consumeth the chaff, their root shall be rottenness, and their blossoms shall go up as dust, because they have cast away the law of the Lord of hosts, and despised the word of the Holy One of Israel. Therefore is the anger of the Lord kindled against his people. The anger of the Lord is kindled against his people. And he hath stretched forth his hand against them, and hath smitten them, and the hills did tremble, and their carcasses were torn in the midst of the streets. For all this his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still. And he will lift up an ensign to the nations from far, and will hiss unto them from the end of the earth. And behold, they shall come with speed swiftly, and will hiss unto them from the end of the earth. And behold, they shall come with speed swiftly. None shall be weary, nor stumble among them. None shall slumber nor sleep. Neither shall the girdle of their loins be loosed, nor the latchet of their shoes be broken. Whose arrows shall be sharp, and all their bows bent, and their horses' hooves shall be counted like flint, and their wheels like a whirlwind. Reference to Ezekiel. Their roaring like a lion. They shall roar like young lions, yea, they shall roar. He says it like 3 times. They're roaring like a lion. They shall roar like young lions, yea, they shall roar. and lay hold of the prey, and shall carry away safe, and none shall deliver. And in that day they shall roar against them like the roaring of the sea. And if they look unto the land, behold, darkness and sorrow, and the light is darkened in the heavens thereof. He will lift up an ensign to the nations from far. From far. AKA lands that may not be on this earth currently. Or if they are, they're very far from what we know. And they come with speed swiftly. And they're armed. Their arrows are sharp. Their bows are bent. They roar like lions. Their wheels are like a whirlwind. They're incredibly fast. They are incredibly powerful. And none shall deliver. All right. That's it for today. I've been going for a while now. That's really freaking deep stuff, chat. So, I don't know. Go back and read it again. Go back and listen to it again and just pray about it, dude. I don't know. We'll be starting another sermon from Isaiah next time. So I'll see you guys then.